Good afternoon. I'm Jelaine Schmidt. I'm the director of the UVA Karsh Institute of Democracy's Memory Project. And I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Andrea Douglas of the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center. Thank you for coming to this info session about a project that we are working on together, Dr. Douglas and I, which is the 2023 Civil Rights Tour, Charlottesville Civil Rights Tour. So the goal of this session here is to kind of briefly describe our overview of the trip and to also get your questions. Our goal for this year is we want the trip to be about, in terms of the constituency of the delegation, about half UVA and half community members. I should say that the trip is intended for those who are new to this community tour. And so there won't be folks that are repeating from the last iterations that we've had. So we're looking forward to having a whole new group and learning together.
Yeah, and this year's tour is different from the other two. We are going to focus on Black Americans post-emancipation during that period of their political and cultural renaissance that we know as the Reconstruction period. And more specifically, we're thinking about the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, those amendments that really deal with citizenship. And so this tour will investigate how white-led state governments in the South gradually restricted Black voting and imposed Jim Crow segregation laws, which were legal until the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 65 Voting Rights Act, and then 1968 Housing Act. So it'll follow this story from slavery to the Civil Rights Movement and through to our present day.
Yeah. So just a little background about the history of this civil rights tour here in Charlottesville. Initially in 2018, Dr. Douglas and I, under the auspices of the Jefferson School, organized a trip for city residents. And the goal of it then, and it was called a pilgrimage then, was to resurface and memorialize the 1898 lynching of Charlottesville resident John Henry James. In order to kind of enfold that history back into our local story. And this is, part of the work that our community has been doing for a long time, actually for a decade, but is with a special intensity since the 2016 Blue Ribbon Commission on Race, Memorials, and Public Spaces. Dr. Douglas, of course, served as a commissioner on that commission. So the goal of that trip is, of 2018 was to focus on lynching and racist violence, and to kind of see ourselves, Charlottesville, not as some sort of grand exception to this, but rather as one more community that actually fits in with a pattern of white supremacist violence. As we just, the year before, during the Summer of Hate of 2017, of course, had been attacked. And so we were reflecting on all that and reflecting on the history of white supremacist violence. So that was the theme of the 2018 tour, was looking at lynching. Also important here was fitting in this trip and helping to equip our teachers, because one of the goals that our community articulated in the Blue Ribbon Commission was to inject more local African American history into the curriculum of the public schools. So that to that end, the Jefferson School has been holding summer sessions, professional development for teachers, in order to equip them with this information. And the trip is kind of intended to be kind of one more step along that journey to resource our public school educators to educate our kids about this.
And, we just want the Blue Ribbon Commission's report. Dr. Schmidt and I just became affirmed that would not be a report that would just sit on a shelf as other reports have done. All of the work that we've done up until this point has been with the true aim of making sure that the 6 months that we spent thinking about what social justice looks like in Charlottesville is something that we are actively engaged in. And so for all of the trips, we hope that once it's over, people come back and actually engage with the ideas that they are exposed to ultimately help us become a place that fulfills the values that we purport for ourselves, and that is of equity and social justice. So these trips have been very informative for people, and people have been moved, and they have in fact done that extra work on their return. So we're very excited to see what this topic will lead to as well.
Absolutely. Strengthening relationships, our local, amongst our community, so that we can become better advocates is what we want to do. We want to show attendees now just a brief promotional video that kind of gives an overview of what the trip was, at least in the trip that we did last year. So Josh, can you share screen and show, make sure we're sharing sound too, and share this video.
These are really powerful experiences and profound places, and they all give us a sense of who we are as Americans, who we've been as Americans, and who we might become.
I feel that there's a real powerful connection between being in a place and learning the history. Visiting sites that are important, like Kelly Ingram Park, or going to Montgomery, going to the Tallahatchie Court. But what is really, I think, important is not just that there were certain kinds of historical events. It's not just history, it's how these stories are told to help us incorporate that and not move on, but move forward and think about the work that we're doing now and how it's rooted in these particular historical moments.
The idea that you had so many different types of people on that trip, from students to teachers to business people to faith leaders to people from the university and others, and making connections and seeing how many people begin to get invested in understanding our history and then invested in saying, well, what is it I need to understand about my own community? What is it that we need to do differently in order to understand our history and then act on that, on the harms of that history?
Charlottesville has layers. Like, even if you could take the negative of what happened 5 years ago with the Unite the Right rally, 5 years later, there's so many things that are coming out that's positive. Having discovered this experience, having the ability to see and to touch and to be a part of history, that's what I would hope. These opportunities are going to be made readily available to not just teachers and community and civic leaders, but for students. What do we all have in common? We have vested interests in the community in which we live in. As that responsibility is incumbent of us to share in these spaces, to share in these opportunities, wrestle with the past. That's what this is about. And the way that you can get through that is to have these experiences beyond textbooks, beyond the classroom.
I'm still digesting all of that I saw and all that I learned. And I want to write more about it. I want to teach more about it. And I'm definitely talking about it.
It's just a very, very profound experience that will influence my teaching, from this day forward.
All right. Okay, so maybe now we can hear from our intrepid trip organizers from Insider Expeditions, Nakimra Moore and Kellen Simmers. Take it away.
course.
All
Oh,
right.
I'll jump in quickly. Hello, everyone. I am Nikimra Moore. I am the program manager for this trip. I actually had the honor of being the program manager for the 2022 trip as well. My colleague Kellen and I, who you'll meet here in just a second, we are a part of Insider Expeditions. We are a tour management company that for the past 15 years has been working in educational and themed travel. But specifically, this is kind of like a passion project for us, this Charlottesville Civil Rights Tour. We have an amazing love for Charlottesville. So yes, I'm the program manager. I do all the logistics. So every single minute of where you guys will be eating, sleeping, the sites you'll be visiting, making sure that you have all the information ahead of time, and just making sure you guys have an enjoyable experience. Pass over to Kellen.
She's the best. So if you have any questions at the end of all of this, Nikimra will be able to answer any of those logistical needs that you may have. My name is Kellen. As Nikimra said, we work for Insider Expeditions, and we helped put the 2021 tour together and are super excited to be back and be working on this again with Charlottesville. As we said, it was awesome experience and really excited to share with more individuals. What I'll be doing is I do a lot of our on-trip guest services. And so basically when we are, on the bus and going between sites, I'll be the person that, helps make sure everyone's comfortable, answers any questions, solves any problem, make sure that we're moving in the right direction. So we're very approachable. So just find me. If you end up joining us, I'll be the person that'll be with you through all the steps along the way. But we wanted to go ahead and walk you through our brochure and kind of show you a high-level general overview of what our itinerary is going to look like for this year. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, and hopefully we don't have any technical issues. All right. Okay. All right. Is everyone able to see this brochure? Can I get one of the panelists to give me a yes? Yes? Okay, awesome. So, all right, June 2023. So we're back going to the Deep South, June 26th through July 2nd. You can find this on our website as well, and I'll give the overview as Dr. Douglas kind of discussed. So let's get down to the itinerary. So Monday, June 26th, 2023, we'll be flying into Birmingham, Alabama, where we'll check into our hotel and, welcome everyone in step by step, have a welcome dinner, introductions, kind of get to know who's here, get to know each other, because this is definitely a trip where we want everybody to, come together as community. And so we really find the welcome dinner and introductions an important piece of kind of starting that journey together. So the first day of actually exploring is going to be on Tuesday, the 27th in Birmingham. We're going to go ahead and have a hop on, hop off bus tour, weather permitting, with a local historian. We're going to stop at a lot of famous sites. Obviously, the 16th Street Baptist Church is something that's very important along this trip and something that we'll continue to highlight this year, along with some other amazing sites around Birmingham as well, including some hotels and other locations that were registered on the Green Book. After we're done with our tour in Birmingham, we're going to go ahead and drive to Montgomery and visit the Legacy Museum in Lynching Memorial. I know for a lot of people, this museum is extremely special. It's something that we really wanted to make sure that everyone that goes on this trip with us from here and in the future gets the chance to go to those two sites in Montgomery. It's a very special place. All right, so on Wednesday the 28th, we're going to be in Montgomery again, and we'll wake up and visit the Southern Poverty Law Center, co-founded initially led by UVA professor and renowned civil rights activist Julian Bond. We highlight that because Julian Bond led tours of the South and acts as a kind of example and inspiration for these tours that we're doing now. And so we wanted to make sure to kind of give a tip of the cap to Julian Bond, and stop by the Southern Poverty Law Center. After being at the SPLC, we'll make our way over to Selma and cross the famous Edmund Pettus Bridge. We'll also be having a discussion with Miss Diane Harris, who joined us this last year. Miss Diane is a lovely, lovely, lovely woman. She was a foot soldier back in the day during all the events that surround Selma. And so she kind of talks about her experiences growing up in the town and kind of everything that happened through her eyes. So that's a great experience. And from there, we're going to make our way down to New Orleans. And we did want to highlight that dinner will be on your own in New Orleans on both nights while we're there. And just wanted to let people know that that's something that you should take into account to budget for it. And also want to let anyone who is applying for our scholarships that we absolutely reach out to us, and our leadership team is working with ways to make sure that, if there is concern about like taking care of dinners on your own, that we want to make sure that that's something that's not blocking anyone from being able to join us on this trip. So some financial assistance with that as needed. So on Thursday, the 29th, we'll wake up in New Orleans and take a tour of the Laura Plantation and a facilitated discussion of slavery and its impact. This is actually different than the plantation we went to this last year, but we're extremely excited to go to this location. It's actually a Creole plantation, so it has a little bit of a different history than the Whitney plantation we went to this last year. But what's really awesome is that we'll actually have a in-person guided tour around the plantation as opposed to a self-guided audio tour, followed by a sit-down facilitated discussion, which is something that we're really excited to be able to unpack and discuss everything we learned at this location together as a community. After that, we'll have a traditional Creole lunch, followed by our trip back to New Orleans, where you'll have dinner on your own again that evening. All right, Friday, June 30th, we are going to Sumner and Money, Mississippi. Money is the town, I shouldn't say city, the town associated with the lynching of Emmett Till. So we'll stop by Money. We'll see the storefront of the convenience store that this obviously horrible and famous story that we've all heard of, where that begins. Following visiting the store, we'll make our way over to Sumner and actually visit the Tallahatchie Courthouse, where we will have another guided discussion and kind of walkthrough of the murder trial that took place, and a discussion about how that went and, applicability to today, and just a broader discussion about this obviously horrible event. Following our time in Money in Sumner, we make our way down to Memphis, where we have our third and final dinner on your own. And then on the rest, obviously, Saturday the 1st, we'll wake up in Memphis and we'll have a trip to the Lorraine Motel Civil Rights Museum. Obviously is also the location of MLK Jr.'s assassination. This was another museum that we thought is absolutely essential for keeping in this trip. People really, really enjoyed this as kind of a final recap of everything we discuss and see and learn along the way throughout this trip. And so we really wanted to close it out with this location. And another facilitated discussion to close out the trip. And we'll have our farewell dinner at the Stax Museum. Stax Museum is a blues museum and is actually a museum that has really close ties as well to Julian Bond. As I mentioned before, his trips act as an inspiration to this current trip. So we'll finish up there, and at the Stax Museum, we'll finish with that farewell dinner. That's a bit of a, kind of like a talk and walk. So you'll have the ability to enjoy dinner as well as to explore the museum after hours and kind of take a peek throughout it. So, and then final day, that Sunday, July 2nd, we'll wake up and make our way over to the airport and head back onto our hometown. All right, and again, if anyone has any questions about that, please reach out in that Q&A section, and Nakimra and myself will do the best of our ability to answer any questions you may have.
Hey everyone, my name is Claire Payton. First of all, thank you, Kellen and Nakimra, for the overview. That was great. And if anyone has any additional questions about the trip, there will be a Q&A in just a few minutes. My name is, like I said, Claire Payton. I'm the project manager of the Memory Project, where I work with Dr. Schmidt, Dr. Douglas on this and other initiatives. And I just want to go over the structure of the trip, how to apply for the trip, how to get on the trip, and a couple other details. So I'm going to take us over to, well, first, let me put the link to the website in the chat. And then I will share my screen and we can all travel there together. So here's the website that I'll be showing you. So this is the website for the tour that's hosted by Insider Expeditions. And you can see the video. This is the link to the seminar that we're in right now. You can download the brochure that Callan reviewed with you, and there's more details and more information in it. If you look at the PDF, you can download the trip brochure here. This is where you can watch the video that we showed you and share it with your friends and learn a little bit more about what we've done in the past and what we're hoping to do in the future. So the trip has 3 different kinds of travelers. So first of all, one significant difference from last year is that last year was 100 people with 3 buses. It was quite an experience. This year we're scaling down a little bit. The trip is going to have a total of 40 people on 1 bus, which also means there's fewer spots. There's 3 different types of travelers. One is a traveler who wants to just buy a ticket, and the cost of a ticket is $3,000 plus airfare, and you can register here and put down a deposit and secure your spot. We have about 8 to 10 seats set aside for this kind of traveler, give or take. There's also the rest of the traveler spots are sponsorships and scholarships. So we're working with UVA units across the entire university to sponsor staff. And those partnerships are in development right now. And if you are a UVA staff person and we've established a relationship with your unit, hopefully they will have set aside a couple of seats for folks, and how they bring people from their unit onto the trip is sort of up to them. But there's going to be about 10 to 15 UVA staff spots. The rest of the spots, the remaining 10 to 15 spots, are going to be scholarships and are going to be sponsorships, and I'm going to walk through what those look like. So here, if you're going to end up being sponsored by a UVA unit, you would go to the website and fill out the application under Sponsored Directly by UVA. We have 3 different kinds of scholarships. One's for public school teachers from the Charlottesville area. One is for low-income residents of Charlottesville, and one is for racial justice advocates in Charlottesville. So I'm just going to really quickly open these up and you guys can see what they look like. So if you are a public school teacher, we encourage you to fill out this. And what we're really interested in learning about is how you see your experience on this trip potentially enriching your classroom, and what you can offer your students through participation on our tour. And then we have low-income residents of Charlottesville area. And the questions are about your income level, and also we're interested in how you take what you learn on the trip and potentially share it with your community. As you can see, there's a common theme here. We're really trying to bring people on the trip who have the linkages to make the trip bigger than just itself and bigger than just the people who went on it, by sharing it with folks, by expanding its impact and its lessons to our entire community. And then finally, racial justice advocate in the area. You fill out this information and we ask you questions about your background as a racial justice advocate, why you want to attend, and again, how can you apply what you've learned into the community. For the scholarships, and for the sponsorships, the 3 here at the bottom, the Memory Project and specifically the Jefferson School is covering airfare associated with that. So if you're awarded a sponsorship, all of the expenses of your trip is covered. If you're sponsored by a UVA unit, we're working out relationships with UVA about how to get the travel covered as well whenever possible. And if you are paying your own way, then you are also responsible for your airfare. We're also accepting donations. If folks want to donate to help make it possible for other people to travel on the trip, we're welcoming that kind of support. And so total, the trip composition in all is going to be about 5 staff, 5 to 10 or 8 to 10 ticketed travelers, 10 to 15 UVA staff, and 10 to 15 community sponsored guests. And we're really looking forward to meeting you guys. And so with no further ado, we have about half an hour left in the meeting time. And we want to hear questions from you guys. We really want to give you all the information that you need to make a decision about whether you want to apply for a trip, whether you want to support it in some way, whether this is the right fit for you. So please use the Q&A function if you have any questions, and our esteemed panelists will do our best to answer them. So one question here is, how do I make a donation? So if you go to the website, I'll just share my screen again. If you go to the website for the trip, you'll see there's a sponsor a participant link here at the bottom. So where it's sort of at the bottom beneath, you would use the register link to just register a spot right now. You would apply for a scholarship here, and then beneath that is sponsor a participant. And this is how you would do that. And this goes directly to Insider Expedition and our fund with them for the trip. One thing I'm realizing I just forgot to say about the applications is that for scholarships or registrations, the due date for that is March 26th. And we will be we'll be reviewing all applications starting on that date. And about 10 days later, we'll be releasing our decisions about the scholarship awards. Oh, we got some more questions. Okay, very good. Is there an age requirement for this tour? Would a 12 or 14-year-old be welcome? Nikima or Callan, do you want to answer that?
Currently, that's a great question. Currently, we do have the requirement set to 16 and over. That's kind of what we did last year as well, but we will discuss this and, send out a memo about that. One of the reasons is because we go to Bourbon Street, and it's a pretty heavy topic. So we want to make sure that the attendees are able to, I guess, handle both what they're taking in as well as like more of the social aspects of the trip, which are slightly for a more mature audience, I guess you can say.
What is the single occupancy cost? That is a question we have.
So that is an additional $500. It says it on the website. So when you go to register for the trip, you'll see that there's an additional fee for that. And that's just because you get the room to yourself in all stops.
Do you want to just speak briefly about if you're not paying the single occupancy cost, what your lodging setup is going to be, and like how that all shakes out?
For double occupancy? Sure. So once you, so say you are a single traveler wanting to be on the trip, but you want to be paired with someone, like we will pair you. And then there will be 2 double beds in a room. All of the hotels that we're staying at are the rooms are quite spacious, but you will be sharing a bathroom. And typically we go by the buddy system. So usually you'll be like on the probably sitting in similar areas for like dining if we're in a group setting. And I don't know, Kellen, would you like to add anything to that? It's pretty standard.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to highlight is just that if you don't have someone that you're specifically traveling with, don't let that be something that holds you back from registering to join us on this. As we mentioned last year and this year again, we are able to pair people together, And so, yeah, just don't let that be something that, pushes you away from joining us. And, maybe if you register and then you find someone else in your community that you also has registered, that's a situation where you could also reach out to us and we could do our best to pair you together in that situation.
So there's a question here for university staff. Should we first approach our supervisor for sponsorship before submitting application? Yes. So the way we did it last year was we worked out, the Memory Project did a bunch of outreach to basically every school at UVA. And we got commitments from McIntyre and Darton and, data science and engineering, every medical school to sponsor community members and staff members. And then once the school had made that commitment, then the school or the unit shared that news with its own community. And so, either solicited interest or, selected folks who they thought it would be a really good fit for, perhaps people who are already doing DEI work in those units. And then that person, once they had been selected by their unit, was authorized to go to the website and register. And we will be in communication with all of the units who are sort of signing on to this. And so we'll know to anticipate, like, so-and-so is going to be signing up. We'll hopefully have been told ahead of time. If you are really excited about this trip, we would love it if you told your unit that you went to this meeting and that this is a UVA initiative that's going to be coming down their pipeline, and that you're really excited that their school might support it. But at this particular moment, we're still working out those relationships. So that should be something that you would learn about more in the coming weeks from your unit. I hope that answers your question. And if not, feel free to ask a follow-up in the chat. The next question is, I think for Nikimra, probably, is the $500 deposit required to apply, or when you are accepted? If it is required at application, is it refunded if you are not accepted as a paying traveler?
You can apply for a scholarship and you do not have to pay the $500 fee.
I think she's asking about if you're interested in paying for a seat on this trip, I think you can just go and sign up. And
yes, yeah,
that's a first come first serve situation.
Yes, yeah, if you would like to do that, you can make the payment. And but then are you asking if you also apply? Let me just, I think I missed it because it went away. But you can apply and that there's no fee for that. You can also just like make a deposit for registering for the trip. And if you would prefer to just be like a scholarship attendee and you end up not getting it, then yes, we can refund you.
The next question, sorry, did I just cut someone off?
Nope.
Okay, the next question is International Studies Office included in the list of sponsoring offices? Karen Freeman, who asked that question, I don't think so, but that is just because maybe we haven't thought of that yet. And if you think that would be a good place to reach out to, we will definitely be doing that. So feel free to follow up in the near future. And then this is maybe a question for anyone. From Mary, can you kindly provide examples of how the focus on reconstruction and citizenship is specifically interwoven in the trip compared to earlier trips?
We have like a pretty in-depth discussion with all of the sites on what the theme is. And so they're going to arrange various exhibits in, like, say, the museum, so that it highlights this theme. But I think that probably where you'll get like the meat of that is during the facilitated discussions that we'll be having throughout the trip, which will be led by historians and academics.
I would
Joanne,
say,
would you like to add?
Yeah, I was going to say the Legacy Museum is a place where we will be learning more about Reconstruction and also kind of the battles over citizenship and kind of navigating public spaces, you know, so that'll be a place where that takes place.
And also the Lorraine Motel. I mean, that is the kind of final battleground, right? This is the place where King in 1968 gets murdered, and that institution, that the Associated Museum, has a pretty extensive conversation around American civil rights history. So you get it. There's a very physical and visceral relationship that all ultimately describes for you.
Any other questions? Just got a question from Catherine. Can you go over the application timeline again? I am happy to do that. Yes, so the applications, so you're welcome to get a ticket right now. And if you are applying for one of the sponsorships or the scholarships, the application for the scholarships, like the public school scholarship, the low income scholarship, or the racial justice advocate scholarship, those are due March 26th, and decisions will be released around April 7th. And as I've mentioned before, the UVA staff sponsorships are currently being worked out. And so those might have a different timeline internal to any UVA unit. But the scholarships that our leadership team will be evaluating are due March 26th. And I'm going to put the memory project email address here in the chat for anyone who wants to follow up with additional questions that aren't addressed today. I do my best to get back to you as soon as possible with answers and information. Anything else, even if it's about lodgings or, you know, staying cool in the deep South. Okay, here we go. I wonder if there are any plans to create trips like this for minors. I think I can just, not currently. Not to say that that isn't a wonderful idea, because, you know, the impact of this trip we think is pretty profound and can have meaning to folks at any stage of life. But in our current thought about it, we don't have active plans to make a trip of that sort, unfortunately. Any final thoughts from Jolene and Andrea? You guys want to say one more time, or in a different, you know, at a different level, why you think that people should be coming on this trip and what we hope to change about the world and about our community by organizing it?
I do want to say, I mean, at least in Charlottesville, we're gonna move into an election year. Some of these things that we're thinking about, that 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment that describes citizenship, it's the 14th Amendment that is embroiled in lately. It's the 15th Amendment that we have to vote on. I think there's a reason why these three amendments that are those important amendments are so very unstable in our community. And I think that as we start to think about how we move through those histories, we better understand why we need to always be fighting every single day and lobbying every single day to protect the kinds of rights that those amendments represent, since in every way we feel them always being threatened in one way or another. And our present day conversations hinge on those amendments.
Absolutely, especially, you know, 15th Amendment with, you know, voting rights. I mean, we're going to be in Selma, of course, you know, looking at that. And yeah, it directly applies to some of the voter suppression measures that are going on all, you know, in our country today. And, you know, 14th Amendment, of course, you know, dealing, looking at the Emmett Till lynching, and notions of bodily autonomy and equality before the law, is coming up, and also ever relevant topic. But I would say, I mean, something that I liked about doing this trip is that I just feel that people learn better in a group, and more people, I'm an academic, I write books, and this is kind of the coin of that realm. But I think that more people, or a broader swath of people, learn better when we're moving together through time and space together, through these locations where the history happened. It just makes it so much more real, so much more relatable when you can imagine the spaces where people struggled. And it also facilitates, kind of making a link between our present day struggles and the inspiration of these folks who have gone before. I just found it really inspiring. The first time that we went was in 2018. And I mentioned that, that was a kind of a pilgrimage, where we were memorializing a member of our community who was lynched. And it was really inspiring to come back then in the, later in the summer and in the fall of 2018, and run into people at public meetings, at the school board meeting. This was a big issue going on with Albemarle schools and housing, affordable housing meetings, and to be able to look out among the crowd and see, it's like, oh yeah, that person was on the trip, and know that you have partners, allies in advocacy, and that's what this is about. It's about building community. It's about learning together and fortifying our commitment to our purported values about democracy, and then coming back and working together on that in our community.
Yeah.
Jillian, that was very powerful. That might be a great note to end on, since we don't have any more questions. Again, my email, or the Memory Project email, has been put in the chat if there's something you want to follow up about. We hope to hear from you one way or another, and thank you for your interest in the trip. Maybe you will get to travel with us, or maybe we will get to travel with you. Have a great evening.
Mm-hmm.